So, good morning. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell everybody what you do and who you do and blah, blah, blah?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. So my name is Ben Fox, and I am the creator of Shepherd.com, which is a book discovery website that is trying to help readers find books in new ways and help authors to meet readers.
Very cool. When
Uh,
did you start it?
I started work on it very late in December 2020, and then we launched publicly, I think, around April 2021.
Oh, amazing. And how's it going?
It's going great. We're getting about 400,000 visitors a month. We've got about 9,000 authors who have taken part so far, and we're
Wow.
going slowly and steady, I guess, in terms of building out new features and getting things in place.
That's amazing. And what gave you the idea and why did you want to kind of launch such a website?
Yeah, I love to read. And so I always wanted to do something to help readers and authors and do something with books. And I could never find out I could never find a unique angle. Um, and, since I read a lot, I'm constantly looking for books. And I always got frustrated with Amazon or any of the online bookstores because you go and you search, and it was a lot of ads, which can sometimes be okay, but it doesn't really let you like narrow in on a focus. Like, I want science fiction books with AI. It's always kind of hard to find those. So part of this idea was born out of my own frustration, because I wanted to be able to go to a website and say, okay, show me all science fiction books, and now let me narrow in on this topic, or I want them to also be dystopia or a detective, story. So that was half how it was born, and then the other half was I walked into a independent bookstore at some point, and the team of the team that ran the bookstore had put little index cards to spotlight the books that they loved within the bookstore. And I thought that was so cool, because I was wandering around the aisles, and they had these little index cards that said, hey, this is Micah's favorite book and here's why. And so I kind of
That's cool.
took that. Yeah, it was really a great way to connect with a book and get you interested in it. So I kind of stole that method and tried to apply it where I ask authors, okay, you share 5 of your favorite books around some type of topic, theme, or mood, and tell us why you love them, and then we use that to introduce the author's own book and their story to readers as well.
It's a really cool idea, actually.
I've done the 5 books.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoy doing it because I read a lot and I listen to a lot of books, and obviously I write as well. So I found it really an interesting kind of exercise to do, in the sense of it made me reflect on the books that I read. I mean, now I would put in a completely different group of books, because I've read different things and I've enjoyed those different things. And I think it is an annual thing or a 3-monthly thing. And it's almost that bit about, well, how do you promote the book that you've got that's on there? Because, what's the value to you? How do you make money from it?
Yeah, so and I can give some links too to drop down for like a long explanation. So I've got a big post on our business model.
Oh, amazing.
So right now our business model is like 50% affiliate revenue. So we get a small share of any book sold through Amazon, bookshop.org, and eventually other bookstores I'd like to add. It's about 25% through display ads, which I despise, but they help pay the bills. So I try to keep them minimal. And then the other 25% is we have founding members. And these are authors and readers, although mostly authors right now, who sign up to help keep us independent, and they get some perks out of it. So that's kind of our smorgasbord of income
That's
right
pretty
now.
cool.
And we're not break even on cost yet. I'm hoping to hit that point next year. So
Okay.
it is heavily funded from my savings, but I'm hoping to get to break even by December of next year.
Amazing.
So what would an author need to pay to be part of that? Do you want to just kind of push that through?
Yeah, it's a $50 a year, or they can do a one-time donation if they're more comfortable. And that, it goes 100% towards building new features. We're already can cover our costs for like operations and server. And so that money is basically just helping us keep our dev team going. We have 1 part-time developer, 1 part-time designer, and myself. So that purely goes to new features. So it's pretty cool in the sense that all that money is just dedicated to building, new things for readers and authors.
You know what's interesting, and this is just, I mean, I'm going into my other world now, is that I got that information, but I didn't get that information in an email. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think what you're saying, and I think having that personal interaction with somebody makes such a difference, to say somebody saying, "Oh, I'll just send you the money." Whereas I think when it comes on an email from somebody that isn't called you, that's called somebody else, that actually it feels very marketing type stuff. And I think it loses that personal relationship with you and the organization.
Yeah.
That's
It's always
just
hard.
my experience. It's just nice to hear that, because then it makes me want to go, yeah, I'll
Yeah.
send you the money.
Yeah.
We want to support the project.
Yeah, because I think there's a thing about, I love supporting projects. I love seeing people and having a story behind it, and then going, yeah, I'll help you. I've got a young lad outside on my drive at this moment in time who's filling up water containers through a filter system so that he can set up his window cleaning business. And it's like, I love doing things like that. It's at my expense, but I don't care really. It's just nice to see people develop and progress and stuff.
Yeah.
So how did you grow to 400,000 visitors? I mean, that's a huge number. That must have taken time, but also, what route did you go down?
Yeah, so my background is pretty heavily marketing and pretty heavily like search engine optimization. So most of our traffic right now, at least a big chunk, is from search engines like Google. And so when we started with that strategy in mind of trying to target long tail searches around books. So like when somebody goes to Google and they type in, okay, the best books about the Battle of Midway, or the best books, best sci-fi books with AI, or something like that, we're trying to help authors get in front of those people in a way that they couldn't do with their own site, because Google really rewards sites that are big and have a lot of, for lack of a better word, power in the online space, like a lot of links going to them and other things. So that's where I think a good 75% of our traffic comes from, and what I've focused on. And it takes a lot of time. It takes usually around 3 years to start ranking for more competitive searches.
Yeah.
We've had really good luck with our growth being very quick. But we're still in a very early stage. 400,000 sounds like a lot, but in the scale of the internet, it's actually not crazy. Like I want to be hitting 1 million. I was hoping to hit that this year, but I think that's more likely next year. I'd like to be hitting 1 million a month, because that would really, that's a big number. So yeah, it's been pretty much search focused. And then towards early next year, I'll be switching and adding a different marketing channel to focus on email.
Okay.
Specifically, so growing a email newsletter base of readers who want personalized book recommendations.
That's
and we'll
cool.
I'm really excited and hoping it works really well. But we basically will ask readers, what are your favorite books, your favorite authors, your favorite genres, and your favorite topics, and using that data to pitch them book lists that authors have done for us, and kind of feeding them back into the system and helping them find cool book ideas every couple weeks to a month.
That's pretty cool. Have you thought about kind of going down like a subscription model where actually you send them the books?
Yeah, it's I've thought about it, but I'm not sure, because it does require, a lot of physical, warehouse space in some bits. So I'm keeping an eye on it, but for now I didn't want to deviate too much from a kind of our advertising affiliate model, just because it would add a lot of complexity. But it is something I'm watching to see, how other book businesses are doing that too.
Yeah, it's amazing how many different industries now are using the subscription model to kind of grow their businesses and capture customers for the long term.
Yeah.
So, but do you then take people's information and give it to other people? Because that's something that always makes me scared, because I don't want every Tom, Dick, and Harry emailing me.
No. It's all internal. So it'd be like you come to our site and you say, hey, I love this book. I love, fantasy. I love nonfiction biographies, something like that. And then our system basically would go through all the data we have on our side for book list and books. And then it's, creates an email and sends it to them that says, hey, you might like these book lists. Here's the best presidential biographies. Here's the best biographies about the royal family, things like that. So it's customized to what they generally like to read.
Nice.
But yeah, we don't share data with anybody. I mean, apart
Good.
from if you click to Amazon and buy a book from them, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah.
So where do you live?
I live in northern Portugal.
Oh
Oh,
wow.
do you?
Yeah, right
Oh,
around the
right.
corner.
That is not a Portuguese accent, though.
No, I grew up in the United States. We moved moved end of 2019 over here. My wife and my now 6-year-old son.
Oh,
Wow.
amazing. What made you choose Portugal, and why the move?
Yeah, so we originally had moved to Valencia, Spain, which we
Yeah.
love. It's one of our favorite cities. And we could only stay a year just due to some complications. And then COVID hit in the middle of that. And so we decided, okay, well, we need to get somewhere quick before, more lockdowns happen. And we decided to go to Portugal. It had beautiful nature. It was, close by, and it seemed like a good fit. So it was kind of a mad scramble
Wow.
in November, December to, move, find an apartment, everything else, because Portugal was just starting to shut down again for that big wave that was coming.
And you're still there now?
Yeah, we're still here. Yeah, we love it. It's a beautiful place, and the people are super kind.
So what
Amazing.
about why Europe? Why are you not in the States?
Yeah, so that's a big list of things. We are dual citizens, so we had some
Right.
options. And I think for us, it came down to quality of life. The United States is a great place. Grew up there, and I love it. But it's also grown to be an even more brutal environment in some ways. So it was just, we felt like, okay, well, let's go see what this is like, and if this is a better fit for us right now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. Is there a did you struggle with the language over there, or is that something that you just kind of taught yourself? Portuguese? Is it Portuguese, or do they speak
Portuguese,
Spanish?
yeah.
Yeah.
Portuguese, yeah.
Yeah.
So my wife and I have both traveled a lot, so we're pretty used to communicating with,
Yeah.
not as much language as we probably should. I don't speak much Portuguese at all yet, because I've been trying to start Shepherd, and that's all in English for the most part with the people I work with. So my son is getting quite good, of course, because he started school last year. He's lapped me about 100 times, and my wife is quite good. She's not fluent or anything, but she can do some of the basics. But yeah, with Google Translate, I get pretty far. And a lot of people speak English, which is not the best crutch if you are trying to learn. But if we stay here long term, I'll start taking classes at some point. But for now, the focus has been trying to get Shepherd up. So I've just stuck with English now.
So is Shepherd is that your full-time job, or is there, I mean, you alluded that you've got a background in marketing. Is that something you still do?
Shepherd's my full-time job. I don't get paid for it. I'm kind of semi-retired from past businesses I've sold. So it's kind of like my main focus, and I'm hoping in a few years it can pay me a little bit, but for now, it's kind of a semi-retirement project.
Nice. So you're in a really fortunate position by the sounds of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very lucky on some of the past career successes have been lucky.
Yeah. That's really cool. And does your wife work?
She doesn't right now. She's been kind of staying at home, but now with my son starting school, she's starting to look at what's next for her too. So she's poking around trying to figure that out.
Oh, amazing.
It's an interesting position, isn't it? When you make the huge step that you've done, is to come out of the country that you were born into and going into, I mean, Europe's up and down. There's some amazing bits, but there's some not so amazing bits as well. And you've got a child, and you don't speak the language, and do you know what I'm saying? And financially, you've put all this money into a company. You've been really brave about all of that. That's massive changes, emotionally, spiritually, physically, the lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. I've been an entrepreneur since I was a little kid, so I think my wife could probably answer that better in terms of the effects and of the ups and downs. For me, it just feels slightly normal. So, but I know, from chatting with her and about it, it's pretty chaotic at times, and it feels, intense. When we first got married, we went through a period where a business sold, another one got spun off, and it was just insanity. So she's kind of been through the ringer on that. So, a lot of this was handled better since we had already kind of been baptized by fire. But yeah, it's hard. It's isolating at times. Although Portugal has been great, then we landed, and she has a very good a very good group of friends that she made at the park, and he has friends, especially with school. So a lot of them too speak English, so it hasn't been as isolating as it's been. I mean, in some ways, the United States was a weird situation where, yeah, you can talk to everybody, but it's very hard to make a friendship because nobody has time because they're all working 60 hours.
Yeah.
Her community is much bigger. It was much bigger within months of moving to Portugal than multiple years in the state we were living in. So there's sometimes that weird bit where if people have more time, it's also easy, even if there are some cultural differences.
Yeah. And I because I work with some people in America, and I see them, and I know the pressure that they're under to not take their annual vacations, and their mental health really struggles with that. We're a mental health charity, so we see that at this end, but for very different reasons. It's like I was quite shocked actually that people are expected not to take a vacation every year. They're not expected to have a long weekend, or it's quite brutal, really.
Yeah, I have a terrible analogy I tell people here when they're trying to figure it out, is I kind of view the United States as you're stuck living in a guerrilla war, where it's just constant stress going on at all times, and 10% of the population loves it. They're built for it.
Yeah.
I have a dark sense of humor, so I call them ear takers, where like terrible movies where they're walking around with necklaces of ears because that's what they're used to and they love it. I don't think long-term it's good for them, but the other 90% of the population is just miserable because they're stuck in this environment where they can't take vacation. We don't have any federally mandated minimum vacation. Our healthcare system is utterly broken. So yeah, it's a bit of a mess. There's a lot of good things too, but the work environment is very unbalanced.
Yeah.
It's funny really because I've got a good friend of mine who is absolutely desperate to move to the United States. He's desperate to live there. He's desperate to start a family there because he still sees this kind of this dream of being in the US and all the amazing things. But then I've spoken to a lot of people, including yourself, who are kind of moving out of the US. They're looking for different things because they don't want that sort of work-life balance. They don't want the challenges that they have. So it's really interesting to see all the different views. Do you think that there's ever a time that you would go back?
Yeah, we would definitely consider going back. We've thought about it at times. I kind of leave that up to my wife to choose kind of where we're headed. It's much harder for her. My work is all over the internet, so I have similar groups of connections. Yeah, a lot of my connections are still there. Whereas for her, it's a bit more isolating, especially we'll see as she decides what she wants to do next, work-wise or project-wise, because that can have a big impact since she's more in the physical space, whereas I can do my work from anywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, I still think the United States it has some amazing things going for it. And, obviously I think it's a very lucky perspective to be able to consider the United States like a hard place to live. There's plenty of people that still want to get there. It has tremendous, opportunities for making money and many other things. But yeah, I think Europe has done a good job about presenting another option for what life is supposed to look like. Like maybe you don't need to maximize your GDP. Maybe, it's a balance between GDP and also quality of life.
Yes, absolutely. No, I think you're spot on there.
My son actually lives in America most of the time. He has a home here, but he lives in America most of the time. He absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
I think he spends quite a bit of time at home now just because of circumstances, but generally he spends more time in America than he does in England, and that's where his career took off, and that's where he's gonna be probably for the rest of his life, or the rest of his career, more than anything. And he's got some amazing friends, an amazing support system that in a sense, I think people value it greater sometimes out there than they do here. And I know you're friends with Will, but I do think sometimes people don't realize how important people are, particularly when you move to another country. And I noticed when we had a family tragedy recently, and they were amazing, absolutely amazing. You know, everybody, every single person that's close to him in his life just came together and like huddled him up and looked after him, which was really
Yeah.
amazing, you know, and I loved that for that. I loved them for that.
Yeah.
It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So what happens to your family? So obviously, have you got a mum and dad, or are they still out, you know, they're in the States still, or are they?
Yep, they're in the States, you know, and my wife, her family lives in a town, I think about 45 minutes away from where my parents are. So that is nice that they're all in the kind of
Yeah.
same circle. And then I have a brother, and he lives in China. So
Oh.
he's equally far away. Yeah. And then a sister who lives in my hometown as well.
Right. So
Yeah.
what did the parents do so badly that you all ran away from home?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. They didn't do anything badly. They were great. I think more it was for us, it was opportunity. And I don't, you know, I would say for my brother, it was heavily opportunity. China had, you know, pays better for what he does. And then now he's built a professional network, and he's married, and he just had his first kid this summer.
Oh.
So, I mean, he's kind of embedded and has that, you know, going for him. You know, if you build a community and a network like that, it's very difficult to leave. But yeah, I don't know. I think for me, it was the place I grew up is kind of a bit boring for me, and it's pretty small. And so I just wanted a bit more energy and stuff going on. And I think my brother in some ways felt similar.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I live in a very small community, really. I mean, literally there's 57 people in the hamlet that I live in. And I think when we moved, we pushed the population, when we moved into the hamlet, we pushed the population up massively with the 5 of us. But it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because in fact, my kids have all stayed close by, apart from Will, who commutes obviously to America and back again. And it is that thing about how important is family to your mental health and to your kids as well, because it must be tough on your parents not being able to see little one whenever.
Yeah, that's the big downside. You know, my wife, you know, takes him home every year is what we've been trying to do. Because she grew up with her grandparents close, whereas when I grew up, my grandparents came once or twice a year, and we tried to visit them. So it was very interesting to see the different models. But yeah, it's something we've been trying to do, and we're not sure how that's going to keep going, you know, now that he's in school, because that's really changed.
It's a bit harder. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's harder for them. I mean, especially because the new baby too is in China as well. But I don't know, you know, I think families have such different mappings. Like my wife's family is very much, they all stay in the hometown. They're all in that area. And my mom's mappings, I mean, she came out of a military family that moved around. She has sisters all over the, you know, country. So for me, growing up, it was kind of normal that my family was everywhere else, and we maybe would go visit them sometimes. I didn't really have local family until much later, if you move closer. So yeah, it's interesting. I think either model can work, but it is very different. And I think if you don't have family close, you have to have a strong network that kind of, you know, replaces them.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and I guess also, you know, because of the advent of, you know, FaceTime and Zoom and things like that, it's so much easier to have that face-to-face communication with family and friends that are far away. It kind of it helps those connections. How have you found that?
Yeah. I mean, the video really does help when you're able to see their face. Of course, it's not the same, but yeah, my brother and I probably talk every 3 weeks over Zoom for a good hour or more. And, you know, WeChat, WhatsApp, all those things, we can message pretty frequently. And my parents, that's pretty easy to do as well. But, you know, it's not this, I say the thing that's missing is obviously my son being 6, he can't do the screen for that long. It's not the same as having him there. Yeah. So, I mean, some of that obviously you're lacking, but it does help. I mean, we stay in touch, you know, very easily. They try to visit when they can and so on, but it's hard. You know, my parents like to travel. My wife's family doesn't like it as much. So we definitely have to go back to see them and make that happen. So yeah, it's challenging.
And I think it's, I mean, my grandchildren live around the corner. They're not very far away at all. But I think even that's challenging. I think any relationships when you have children or grandchildren and aunties and uncles and Tom, Dick and Harry, or whoever's in your life. It is those dynamics are quite difficult in any situation, wherever you are in the world.
Yeah, I will say one thing I really like about kind of the more distance is when the visit does happen, it's usually higher quality and more intense.
Yeah, it's a bit more meaningful, isn't it? I get you.
Yeah, like my parents, my mom and stepdad joined us in France, where we took a vacation this summer, and so they were with us for 2 weeks in rural France, staying with us, and that's an amazing experience, you know, both for my son, but also, you know, for me, and that was really nice. Whereas if we were living in the same town, you know, that doesn't happen exactly the same way. It's more like, okay, like, you know, we're going to go over there and have dinner one night, and then in between all this school and the sports or whatever else, you know, you're trying to like place it in. It's a little different. It's nicer because you are there in a more informal basis, but I kind of like the intense, longer stays.
Yeah, that's nice. I agree with you. I think that would be nice, because I do think, you know, the kids come here, they have a milkshake, they have this, they have that, bye, and they're here for like 2 hours, had a little ride on a horse, you know, and then zip back out to wherever they're going to. So it is, yeah, I agree with you there. I think
it's different models all the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
You gotta plan a family vacation, and then get everybody in a big cabin or a
we're all coming to the States next year.
Okay, cool.
So well, that's the plan anyway. So yeah. But we're doing the Disney with the grandchildren.
Okay. I was wondering. Yeah, that would be awesome. You'll get to see them in that environment and have fun.
Yeah,
watch them melt down into the day.
I think we'll all be knackered. Yeah. So where do you hope to go with the business, with the book? And I've got 2 questions really. Do you love books?
Yeah, of course.
So you mentioned earlier that you read a lot of books. How many books are we talking?
Yeah, I read about 100 books a year. I read very fast. I got very lucky in some way that just absorb them. So yeah, amazing. Yeah, that's nice.
That's really cool.
And obviously you're sci-fi. That's what you suggested.
Heavily. I mean, lately, I feel like in 2020, I went like full out of nonfiction. I was like, I'm getting enough from the news. So yeah, it's heavily, I read a lot of historical fiction, fantasy, sci-fi, and then, you know, a fair bit of nonfiction in different areas. I like history a lot, so I read a lot of history.
Nice.
So do you ever read biographies and things like that?
Yeah, although more in the past. I was reading quite a bit, yeah.
And does your wife read?
She does. She doesn't read as many books as me, but she's been finding some good ones lately. Yeah, she's kind of all over the place.
A woman after my own heart.
Yeah.
And physical or digital books?
Yeah, so I used to have a lot of physical books, but then I got rid of them with travel. Even when I was younger and traveling a lot, the ebook was like a revolution. I mean, it's such an amazing feeling, especially if you're reading 100 books, you know, a year, to have those all in your pocket. It was just an amazing feeling, because, you know, usually when I traveled, I would be going into bookstores and it's like $25, you know, for an English book, depending on where you're at. And it was very difficult. I ended up reading the same book like 8 times on a vacation or something.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, heavily ebook and Kindle now.
And you do audio?
I've started to when I have to do some rehab and stuff this year and car trips. So I'm slowly getting into it. It's slower than I read by a big factor. So it's it's a weird experience. Yeah, like I did Dune on a car trip, and I think it took me like, it was like a 40-hour book, I feel like, and I can probably read it in 2 or 3 hours. Yeah. Wow. So it was a different experience. So I do it, and I usually do it with like when I'm doing a workout or rehab or something.
So it's interesting. I've just started a new book audio, and if they really irritate me because they're too slow, because I read quite fast as well, I speed them up. Oh, and my husband laughs, because if I got it on and he can hear it and he's going, oh my gosh, can you keep up with that? It's like, yeah, because some people are like that and it's really boring, and I think, come on, chop, get to the point, please. But yeah, what do you
narrator's read? Important.
What do you read? You don't read, do you?
No, I like to read. I go through phases of reading, so I can go, 3 months where I'm reading pretty consistently and a lot, and then like the last 3 or 4 months I've not read anything. It's really weird, but I like reading a lot of biographies. I like to read about people's kind of life and their history and things like that.
There's a really good one on Vanderbilt. That's one of my all-time
Yeah.
favorites. Yeah. Cornelius Vanderbilt, if I remember right. Yeah. It was
Okay.
one of the craziest stories. I read it like 10 years ago. It was one of my favorite books that year. It's quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also the Matchstick King, if I remember right. Have you read that one?
No.
That's a good one. It's like about the godfather of financial fraud.
Oh wow. Okay. That sounds right up my street.
Yeah, like you'll start hearing all these words that we use now, and they're all basically because of what he did.
Really?
But it's a really amazing story about a businessman from Europe coming to the US and doing an incredible financial fraud. Although it was a little bit, he did have a business, but he really was able to sell it quite well. But it's a really good biography.
Amazing. I'll check that out. Thank you very much. And obviously, yeah, I'll use your website to find more recommendations.
So what's your favorite book? If you had to pick a book, what would it be?
Ooh, just
all-time favorite.
Yeah, because I'm starting to look at, we have one format now. We're just about to add a second. So I'm looking at additional formats because I'd like to do something like this of all-time favorites, or what influenced you in your 20s, what got you through this. Man, all-time favorites, that's a hard one. I would say the one I talk about a lot is Killer of Men by Christian Cameron. Right. And it's a historical fiction with a fair bit of adventure and action. And it's based in ancient Greece. And it's a series of, I think, 4 or 5 books, and he just had a new one come out that I'm about to read. But it just hit me at exactly the right time in my early 30s. I was coming off a pretty bad injury and some health issues, and the way the story is told with an older version of himself, looking back and starting with him when he's younger and so on. It was just very therapeutic and a beautiful story about a really interesting moment in time. So I just love that whole series, but especially that book. That's he's one of my favorite authors.
What's yours?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Probably Harry Potter.
Yeah. So good.
I love Harry Potter.
Yeah,
Harry Potter's great.
Yeah.
I like all the Harry Potter books. I mean, I
same.
remember going on holiday to Ibiza when the last one came out, and we were, as a family, and myself and my eldest son were like sat there the whole time. For the first 2 days we read it from cover to cover, and it was almost like a race. It wasn't a race, but it was almost like a race, like who finished it first. And it was like, I love them. I absolutely love them.
That was actually one of the books I was talking about rereading, because I was in Turkey for one of my first big trips abroad from the USA during college, and I was there for a month, and I found an English bookstore, and of course they had like the UK version of Harry Potter 4, which had just come out. So I bought it, and I think I read it 8 times during that trip. It's so good. That's probably my favorite. But yeah, that series is incredible.
It's great.
Yeah.
So what are you rehabbing from? And is that what the ball and the bike's for? Yeah,
a lot. I mean, I also like doing things physically, so I do a lot of long bike trips around Europe. But I had an annular disc tear from some injuries that I finally got diagnosed in my early 30s, and so I have to do a fair bit of work to keep my back healthy. Yeah, and not in constant pain.
Of course.
Hallelujah.
Yeah,
I found like the Pilates has done that for me. That's made such a difference to my life, and I think. What do you do exercise, Michael?
I like to walk.
Ooh, in the hot spot.
We tease him because we all track each other. There's 3 of us that track each other on our phone, on our watches.
Apple Watch.
And we always take the mickey out of Mike because he doesn't ever really complete his goals, or rarely. And that's the reason why.
Ouch. Getting in trouble here. Yeah.
I know, that's it.
He's always in trouble. What you on about? Yeah. But do you find that when you're in physical pain that impacts on your mental health?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, same as anything, you get too little sleep for too many nights, you have that kind of low buzz of low grade back pain that's just constant. In the long term, it can also make you a much more empathetic, better person, but it's also very hard, not to get snappish or to let darker thoughts in and that kind of stuff. So, it wears you down. I was in pain for a good 2.5 years before I kind of got it diagnosed correctly. And then it was another 1.5 years of figuring out, with a physical trainer, how to get everything else. So yeah, I know it was hard during that point because it was just kind of a solid, 3 pain point just for a long time off and on. Yeah, it wears on you.
It does make us human though, doesn't it? Because people probably have looked at you and seen a very successful young man, and yet you have the same challenges as everybody else in the world, but people feel success, money, all of that kind of wipes that away, but it actually doesn't at all.
Yeah, there's a lot of core stuff. It doesn't wipe away. I mean, it helps with a lot of other things. But
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah.
but yeah, it definitely, yeah, I've got a long running kind of disease I have to manage, immune disease. So, that adds to it. So yeah, there's, everybody's got their stuff inside, Yeah.
Absolutely.
Snap, so have I.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is, and it's, well, we talk about this, don't we, quite a lot, and like Michael come in and go, how are you today? And it's like, it's not just the mental health stuff that's going on, it's that physical underlying stuff that a lot of people have, not everybody, but a lot of people have, that you can't, it's those hidden diseases that people don't see and don't understand, and it does impact on you long term. And you said to me this morning, didn't you, about how are you doing?
Yeah.
Because he said, I can tell now when you're a little bit edgy. And it's like, yeah, I am a bit edgy. I know I am today. And it's just knowing that and not being grumpy with anybody.
Yeah, my dad used to tell me that he started asking for his wife's, like, what was her scale of pain that day, to just understand it better when she was going through stuff, because it would help him know, okay, I need to adjust interactions and understand where she's at, because it's hard to navigate when you're not sure from the outside.
Yeah. So how do you cope with the health service in Portugal?
Yeah, so we have private insurance because we're not in the public system since grew up in the US. I think eventually I might, be in the public service, but I haven't. So we just have private health insurance. It's fantastic. I mean, coming from the US, I think it's very hard for me not to cry when I go to the doctor, both in Spain and Portugal, because in the US, I mean, it's 15 minutes max, and then you're pushed out even at a specialist. I mean, I had questions that I've been able to ask here that I've never even had time to get to. So no, it's been wonderful. I mean, there's some of the traditional stuff where there's delays on appointments for the public system or for like surgeries. But we've had a fair bit of health stuff go on while we're here, and the experience has been quite good. You still have to, be an advocate for yourself and fight if you feel like you need something. But no, it's been great. The doctors are great. I have an appointment later today, actually, for an annual checkup. It's efficient, from what I can see. Yeah, it's been nice.
It's nice to hear that, though, isn't it? Because you don't know what it's like in other countries until you speak to somebody that's in another country and that have got that experience. Because very often, people go to Europe and live in Europe from the UK and come back to the UK to use the National Health Service, which is, and yet I know that Portugal do have they have a good service out there. You just might have to pay for it or not, depending on your circumstances. Now we're out of Europe. I don't know where that stands, really. Where do we stand with that?
I don't know, to be honest.
I think they still have reciprocal agreements. I'm pretty sure I talked to some British people in the area, and I'm pretty sure that it's still hooked together.
That's good.
Is it? And I think that's the thing, isn't it? You go out to live in another country, and it's that having those security blankets around you. Family, friends, blah, 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 blah. But also your health service is vitally important. It's particularly for your mental health as well. Because how do they deal with mental health issues in Portugal? Do you know?
I don't know how the kind of overall system does it. I mean, when I was in Spain, I used a therapist for a bit, but it was privately engaged, and they actually were British retiree who was there. So I don't know on that. I've never looked. Most of the systems, when we do research, where we're living, because we both traveled a lot, you just have to kind of dig in and find out. But usually they cover some form of therapy, depending on, or depression is treated as a medical condition, anxiety, and so on. And the system still treats it. It's not considered private. In the US, it would be considered, entirely out of scope at this point with how the system's changed. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
But I love the attitude towards in America towards therapy. They're just completely open to it, whereas in England there is still a level of stigma attached to it, isn't there?
It's still got that in some places in the US.
Really?
Yeah. The South, where I grew up, you still have that kind of macho. I mean, the US is such a wide range, like, the coast are going to be much more open to that sort of thing. It is changing in the other parts, but in the Midwest, especially, it's got like very German mentality in some ways. So, especially the older generations, it's going to be a bit more resistant. Yeah.
But I do feel that the younger generations are embracing that and
Yeah.
embracing change and recognizing that it's not about a blame culture, it's more about a development culture. And there's that element where taking responsibility, but also recognizing that you're not responsible for everything. Whereas I think sometimes it can be a bit, in other cultures, I'm being careful about what I say, really, it can be very black and white, can't it? And that's not helpful.
Yeah. Younger generations, it's been night and day. If you look, like when I was a kid compared to 20 years later, I mean, it's totally different for what people are willing to talk to. I mean, the internet and social media has helped tremendously in terms of giving people platforms to actually show some of the weaknesses. I mean, they're not good in a lot of other ways, but there's much more open discussion about just life.
So you're talking about the internet and stuff like that, and I know that I agree with what you've just said about that bit about there's positives and negatives to it, and the impact that can have on the individual. And also it's that gospel according to whatever is being posted on the internet at that moment in time, which can be detrimental to quite a lot of people. What's your feelings about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think social media is not very good for people. I mean, generally it is used to kind of show off optimal, like, here's me at my happiest, or here's a fancy vacation. And I think that's, if they're not real about it, it's very damaging, especially the younger people who lack like common sense to know that this person's also in a huge mess. And it does, it has stopped a lot of community. There's a lot of other issues contributing to that, but I've quit a lot of social media. I mostly just do it for work type things or professional capacities, like what's the news in this area, or what are economists I like to follow doing. I like it for that type of stuff, which is hearing from experts and interesting things. But I worry, like, we're very careful about our son, using the phone, and we don't want him to really be active on social media until he's at least to the point he can start understanding it a little better, and the pros and the cons. But they're also designed so addictively. That's what really worries us. It's just a never-ending video stream or updates, and humans just are not good at handling that, I think.
No, I agree with you. I agree. What do you think? Because you kind of got that industry, you're in that industry as well, aren't you?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I think I was chatting to some friends at the weekend about so they've recently had a baby, and they don't want to put photos of their baby on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. And their reasoning for that is they've got friends that they're on Facebook that they don't want to know that they've had a baby. And I sort of said to them, I said, well, surely they're not your friends.
Yeah.
Why are you friends with them on Facebook if you don't want them to know anything about you? Just unfriend them. And it kind of got me thinking that, what's the point? So the idea of social media has changed so drastically, I think, since I was at school. When you were at school, it was a case of all your friends were on there and you can share things. Whereas now it's just become this entire kind of media circus, really, as to sharing memes and funny videos and things like that. It's not really about your own personal life anymore. And I almost feel like you've kind of lost that personal piece. So now when you do go on holiday, you don't want to put those photos on social media for obvious reasons. But how do you share those things with your friends and family? And I'm not sure we've come up with a solution to that yet. I mean, the obvious one is you send them some photos. You share some photos by WhatsApp or whatever. But again, that doesn't feel very normal right now. So I feel like we're missing something.
We do a lot of WhatsApp groups for our family. So we have a group where we then put pictures in, updates, that kind of thing. I do like that, because it does make a closed circle where nobody else, it's our group of just our family, and that is nice. I do like that bit, because I'm saying, like, all my friends stopped posting personal updates. Like, Facebook was great at first because it had real things that were going on in my friends' lives, and then it just disintegrated. Now it's like political posts and other things. And I just, yeah, it's hard.
Well, I don't do it really. I do it. Do I do it? I'm not really aware of what I do and what I don't do, but I do Instagram every day because it's William told me I need to, and I get nagged if you do.
You post kind of thoughtful
Yeah.
things. They're not personal things.
No. I don't do personal. I might put something about the horses, or I might put occasional, but I don't put anything about the kids or family life in that sense.
No, and I think that's the problem. Is that's where social media has gone. Is it's gone to this place now where it's not really personal. It's kind of moved away from what it's supposed to be.
My thoughts are my personal thoughts. They are my personal thoughts. They are what is prominent for me in my life at that moment.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no, I agree with you.
It's like it's more a creative output for you, or a business output. It's like some mismatch between that. It's not like your personal thoughts for your family, which would probably be much different. Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And that's where Facebook started. In my mind, that's where it started, 15 plus years ago. Is that's where you would share photos of your friends and your family and things like that, and kind of what you're up to. Whereas now that's changed so drastically that you don't do that anymore, or very rare.
I'm quite a private person, even though I'm not, if you see what I'm saying, but I am quite a private person. And I think that's coming back to your website and your business and what you do, Ben. What actually happened for me in my head was that was there a level of intrusion in that? Which is what backed me off. So which is why I didn't then go ahead, and I didn't want emails every year telling me that I had to pay X amount of monies and stuff like that. And I think that's where that how do we communicate as human beings to say, this is what I'm doing. This is, do you fancy supporting me or not? Because actually everything's in an email, everything's in a text, everything's on a website, so you lose that humanness. But if I want to, we have a family WhatsApp group as well, and we've always had one with our daughter who sends photographs of the children all the time, and we chat about stuff like that. But we have another family one which is just about communication as a family. So we literally, all of us, communicate about plans, what we're doing and what we're not doing. Would I want anybody else to know about that? No, I would not. I really don't want anybody else to know what I'm getting up to in my life. The people that need to know, know. The people that don't need to know, don't need to know. Do I want to post photographs of my family? No, I don't. I absolutely am not interested. I don't want people to know about what's going on in my life. But on the other side of it, is that me being, I don't know, am I being strange by feeling like that?
No, I personally think that's very normal. I think what's changed drastically in the last 15 odd years is, let's say you're organizing a family barbecue for this weekend. 15 years ago, you would put on Facebook photos of that family barbecue. The kids having fun, eating burgers and whatever. Whereas I think now the world's changed and we don't do that. And in my mind, it's how do you share those things? And I'm not sure we've quite got the right answer. I think sending them to your circle in WhatsApp is it works, but I don't think it always covers kind of everybody that you'd want to share it with. Maybe we all need to go back to printing photos. I mean, I think I've got about 80,000 photos on my phone. I was trying to find a photo a minute ago and I couldn't find it. Because you just take so many photos, and I think how often do you actually go and look at those? It makes me laugh. I was in Paris the other week, and went to go and see the Mona Lisa, and I actually took a photo of everybody taking photos of the Mona Lisa, and I just thought, guys, you if you want to see a photo of the Mona Lisa, you can just Google it, and you're going to find the best photo you can possibly find.
Yeah,
you've gone there, you're in Paris, you're in the Louvre, you've gone to see the Mona Lisa, just go and look at it with your eyes. Don't go and look at it through your camera. And I think I keep seeing on Instagram people talking about the latest iPhone release, and people are mocking and suggesting that there should be a way of stopping people filming and taking photos at live concerts. And I must admit, I cannot wait for that to happen, because I'm fed up of going to see things and all you've got is a sea of people's hands and their phones filming it. And I just think, when do you ever go back and watch that? Why do you need to do it? It boggles my brain.
Yeah. Yeah. I keep hoping there'll be some kind of leap where people stop doing that, especially younger generations that have grown up with it, like that maybe there'll be a reactionary bit of like, why?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
understand. Yeah, it's just a weird one.
We went to Bath yesterday to do a job for Dave. And Dave's my husband, by the way, Ben. And we were driving along this road, and I was in one car and Dave was in another car. We were dropping a car off. And I looked to my left, and there must have been 50, they looked like students, university students. None of them were talking. They were all on their phones. Every single one of them was on their phone. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being on your phone, but it's almost like it's become, people don't talk. They don't do what we're doing today. They're kind of like, they're just like this in front of a phone. And it's like, gosh, what happened? I'm the nutter that says hello to everybody. So I walk past you in the morning and I'll say good morning and good evening or good afternoon or whatever. And I do that with everybody, absolutely everybody. And I think it just seems such a shame that we can't still do that enough, or enough people can't do that, because there was nobody at that bus stop yesterday talking to anybody. All they were doing was sat on their phones the whole time. It's like, wow, it's incredible, absolutely incredible. And it stops this. And I think that was the bit that was my point I was trying to make, was that bit about, now I understand what you're doing and now I have a better understanding. I think, is there a value in, say, making a video about who you are and what you do, so it makes it a bit more personal?
I guess it's about how people interpret information. So there are some people out there that are really good at understanding things based on the written, on what's written. Some people are auditory, they prefer to hear it, and some people are really visual and they need to see it. And I've learned that I'm very visual. If someone's on the phone to me trying to describe something, I really struggle. But if they send me a picture, I'm like, oh, I know what you're talking about now.
Oh, and he really irritates me when he goes, I don't understand.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's it. And I reckon in the years that we've known each other, you've done that so many times.
Oh, definitely.
And it's irritated the life out of me. But yeah,
now it's special. You gotta save and deploy that when you really need it.
Absolutely.
I do more videos now because it is helpful to see the person on the other side is, a real human being. I like emails and that kind of bit. So that kind of communication is effective. It's efficient too, especially when you're trying to bootstrap something like this with a very limited team and resources. It is hard at times. But yeah, I have started to do a lot more video. It is quite nice to explain concepts, or for people to see your enthusiasm and that kind of stuff. I do have good luck with it. So yeah, I've done a couple live events for kind of the founding members here and there as well, where they get to ask questions and I walk them through different, features we're building and that kind of thing. And that the response has been pretty good to that.
Yeah. And I do all of that. I love the whole lot of, I love emails. I love all of that kind of stuff. But what I do like to know what you look like at the end of the
yeah,
because actually you don't look anything like I thought you were going to look like.
Okay.
which is interesting, but I don't follow you on anything, I don't think, so that's probably the reason why I don't know anything about you. So
yeah, I don't really post much on social media or anything else, usually just like updates about the site every couple of weeks.
And what do you do that on?
Well, I have a newsletter for authors, which is the big active one, and then I have a small one for some readers. But that, and then I have a build.shepherd.com is that's like a more personal, what am I struggling with, every 2 weeks update for just about the project. And then I'm on Twitter, which I do use and have found interesting for people. It's got some issues, but I post some updates there about new features and so on, but usually it's just linking to the newsletter.
Yeah. Do you find that, I mean I've published a book, so have you ever thought of looking at that side of, like, the publishing side of it? Because actually it's a bloody minefield, and people I think people get ripped off and they don't have that consistency. So and I had some brilliant experience doing my book, and I had some not so brilliant experiences doing my book. Sounds like the accountant, actually. But no, it's really, really, it's been an interesting journey for me. And actually, I've written a couple of other books, but we were having this conversation, weren't we? And I'm almost kind of reluctant to kind of push them forward because of the experience that I had.
Yeah, so it is something I'm kind of keeping an eye on, but like I said, just staying focused in the time being, because I think the publishing industry, you know, I've had 2.5 years to kind of talk to people and get to know it, and the entire thing is both broken and insane. Like I've never seen anything quite like it, and there's so many, you know, books have so many different angles to them. I'm working on a big breakdown to try to solidify what I've learned so far about just book marketing, because it's entirely broken. I mean, that's a big reason I wanted to do this site for authors on that side of the equation. Is like, there's no place online that you can really market your book that is accessible and not like a lucky podcast invite or something like that. It's just, and it's a very broken system. So when I think about publishers and getting into that, I wouldn't want to get into that unless I can offer something that's going to work better. You know, or because I've looked, and it's just people with passion who want to publish books. I mean, the way you get an agent is you get them interested. So it's just totally lightning. You just have to hope that agent likes what he gets or she gets, and then sells it to somebody who also likes them. It's just entirely who feels some magic spark about your book. It's just totally luck. Unless you have a pre-built marketing audience, in which case that is like a no risk bet for them. If you're, you know, famous and you have 1 million followers on Twitter, they know, okay, well, we're probably going to ship 40,000 copies. But yeah, I wouldn't want to get into it until I kind of see some new model.
No, I agree with you. I agree, and I completely agree with you with the marketing side of it, because actually, you know, if you want to get into Waterstones Books Company in this country, any book, if you want to get in there, you've got, they're personal to each area. You've got to go to each bookstore, unless, like you said, you're a top author or whatever. And it's like, wow, God, sod that, I can't be bothered. You know, just cannot. I don't have the time, the space, or the energy to do that.
And that's a lot what I'm hoping. I mean, my long-term plans with Shepherd is I'm trying to move up the ladder of helping an author with a book. So, you know, first we're just trying to, you know, help them get their first readers that are not family and friends. That'll help them get, you know, reviews on Amazon, which gets the word of mouth machine going. And then I'm looking at other ways to get that word of mouth machine, because I'm starting to think that the only effective book marketing is marketing you do to get word of mouth going, so that you can see if your book has a magic spark with some audience. And then the only other effective type of marketing is, if your book has a magic spark, it's the marketing you do to get in front of that audience that feels it has a magic spark. Because there's a lot of books that, you know, while they might be good, they might be well edited, they don't have some type of magic spark that's really going to propel them, you know, with word of mouth. You know, sometimes that might be, you know, the word of mouth is going to spread slower, and that's okay. But yeah, I'm trying to move Shepherd to help authors do that without paying for ads. The idea is we move them up. We introduce them to audiences. We try to figure out what's clicking. That's a big part of this upcoming feature for the best books or the favorite reads of the year, is we're going to try to use that to identify books that have that spark with readers. Like, this is one of my 3 favorites, and find the lesser known and help them get, you know, more readers. And then that'll accelerate word of mouth and, you know, help that author become, you know, both, well, whatever they want, because a lot of authors might want to be a full-time author. Some authors are doing it because it works with their primary business and it's more lead gen. You know, there's a whole, you know, helps their career if they're an academic. So that's what a big chunk of what I'm trying to do for authors with Shepherd is help them move up that ladder if their book is resonating with readers.
Brilliant. It sounds really good.
I find it interesting as an author that actually, for me, somebody said, oh, this is on our book list for university. And I thought, okay. And then somebody else did the same, and they emailed me and said, oh, I've really enjoyed doing that, and it's been really nice. And you think, and I agree with what you're saying. It's about that, or being in touch with the people that actually are interested in your book. It's because your book is goes to a selective audience. You cannot hit the whole world. It's not real. You know, we just don't. You know, I read books that Mike would never, ever look at. And
Yeah.
my husband would never even think of opening. In fact, I've just sent him all my books off my audio, so he's going to have to listen to them at some point, I'm sure. But yeah, so I think it makes a huge difference. And also it's word of mouth.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And I'm trying, and that's what we're hoping to eventually do for readers as we get more in places. Right now, we give them a really cool place to kind of follow their curiosity and go through the site. Like my brother was recently, he's a writer, and he was writing a screenplay about alcoholism and addiction. And so he went to my site, you know, and he was able to find lists that obviously speak directly to that, which is really powerful because he can instantly, you know, these books are going to be helpful. But what we're eventually working to do as well is to do something I call book DNA, which is by getting people's favorite books and some other details over time as we learn. I'm hoping to match up kind of your favorite books rather than like everything you read or everything you bought, because I'm hoping to help people find the specific types of books that they like, even if they are diverse. So if one of my favorite books, Harry Potter, is not going to be very effective since everybody loves it because it's so good, but you know, if 10 people who love Harry Potter also love, you know, Black Tongue Thief, that is a book that we want to help those people connect with, you know, in a better way. And that's another way we're going to try to help authors connect, is by helping readers find the books that will probably excite them the most.
Amazing. That sounds really good. Well, I'm really conscious of time. We always ask people at the end of the podcast what their kind of goal is for the year. Because ideally we'd like to get you back on the podcast in a year or so's time to see if you've achieved the goal.
Okay. For Shepherd or personal?
You could do one of each if you like.
Okay. I will do for personal. We have a big family goal to figure out what we're doing next. Because we're thinking about moving. Like, where's our home going to be? Yeah. Because my wife is looking for what her next, you know, is it going to be work? Is it going to be a project? And then we're ready for a bigger city now that kind of COVID's, that stage is over. So that's our big family goal, is to figure out where our next home is. And then for Shepherd, my goal is to get to 1 million visitors a month.
Amazing.
That's a big one, because that kind of puts us in a point where we're in good shape financially to keep this pace of develop, maybe even accelerate it. And we're doing even more for authors, because that would be, you know, about 2.5 times our current traffic.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Well, best of luck. And yeah, we'd love to have you back on in a year's time to talk about and see how it's all gone.
Yeah, I'd love that. That sounds good.
Cool. Thanks for coming
very
on.
much.
Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You take care. See you soon.